There's something incredibly powerful about realizing that who you were isn't who you are anymore. The version of you they tried to break, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, who over-explained to be understood, who tolerated the disrespect just to feel loved, that version doesn't exist anymore. And the moment you stop mourning who you were and start embracing who you're becoming, everything changes. See, they didn't just hurt you, they underestimated you. They saw your vulnerability and mistook it for weakness. They saw your patience and thought it was permission. They thought you'd keep shrinking just to fit inside the box they built for you, but pain has a strange way of waking people up. It doesn't just bruise you, it builds you. And while they thought they were tearing you down, what they were really doing was training the fire inside you to burn brighter. Not in revenge, not in bitterness, but in clarity, in strength, in direction. People often think breaking someone means they win, but what they forget is that breaking someone doesn't mean ending them. Sometimes it means waking up a version of that person that's been buried for far too long. That's what happened to you. You were pushed, ignored, disrespected, and you reached your breaking point. But instead of staying broken, you started rebuilding quietly, carefully, intentionally. You stopped showing up in rooms that made you feel invisible. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped searching for validation in people who never really saw you to begin with. And in that silence, in that solitude, in that sacred pause, you found power. You found the version of you that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't tolerate less than you deserve. And that version isn't just stronger. That version is free. It's wild how people start noticing the shift when you stop trying to prove your worth. When you stop chasing, they start watching. When you stop overgiving, they start asking. And that's because you've become something they didn't expect. You've become untouchable in the way that only healed people can be. You walk differently when you know your worth. You speak differently when you've been through hell and decided not to live there anymore. You glow differently when peace is your priority, not people. They might remember the version of you that bent over backwards, the version who made excuses for their behavior, the version who waited for their change that never came. But that version no longer exists. That version learned the hard way that waiting around for someone to treat you right is the slowest way to lose yourself. And so that version had to die for this new one to rise. And yes, it's painful. It's painful to realize that some of the people you loved the most were the ones who didn't know how to love you back. It hurts to know that some of your deepest wounds were caused by people you once would have done anything for. But that pain was a teacher, and the lesson wasn't how to harden your heart, it was how to protect it. The lesson was about boundaries, about discernment, about self-respect. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You stopped waiting for an apology that was never going to come. You stopped hoping they'd see your worth when they were committed to looking away. And you stopped blaming yourself for the ways they mishandled your heart. Because healing doesn't come from their remorse. It comes from your decision to no longer let their choices define your value. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't become arrogant. You became unavailable to things that no longer serve you. You're not who you were when they met you. You're not who you were when they hurt you. You're not who you were when you stayed, hoping they'd change. That person might have broken down in tears. That person might have begged for understanding. That person might have lost sleep, questioning what they did wrong. But the version of you that exists now, this version doesn't ask why they changed. This version asks why you tolerated it for so long. You've reached a point where your peace matters more than their approval. Your healing matters more than their presence. And your future matters more than replaying a past that wasn't meant to follow you here. So let them think what they want. Let them pretend you're still the same, because one day they'll realize the version of you they hurt no longer exists. And by the time they do, you'll be so far ahead in your healing, so grounded in your growth, so rooted in your self-respect that going back will never again be an option. Let them remember who you were. You'll keep becoming who you're meant to be. When someone hurts you deeply, they don't just wound the moment. You carry that ache into the way you see yourself. And for a while, it's almost impossible not to define yourself by the pain you experienced. You begin to question everything: your worth, your voice, your instincts. You wonder if maybe you were too much or not enough, or somehow the reason things fell apart. And that's the trap pain sets. It makes you believe the hurt was a reflection of you, when really it was a reflection of them. The truth is, healing begins the moment you stop internalizing other people's damage as your identity. You start to look at what happened and ask different questions. Not what was wrong with me, but why did I stay where I wasn't seen? You stop carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. You stop replaying scenarios hoping for a different ending. And instead, you begin the slow, sacred process of detaching. Not in bitterness, but in clarity. The most powerful part of healing is reclaiming your narrative, because when people hurt you, they often do it in a way that leaves you silenced. They rewrite the story so that your reactions become the problem instead of their behavior. They minimize the damage, gaslight the facts, and pretend you imagined the weight you carried. But here's what you realize as you begin to grow. You don't owe anyone a softened version of the truth just to keep them comfortable. There's strength in finally saying that wasn't okay, not out of rage, but out of honesty. There's power in standing up for the version of you that didn't know better, the one who tolerated, who hoped, who gave without receiving. Healing is learning how to protect that past version of yourself with present boundaries. It's refusing to abandon her again. It's deciding that this time you'll choose you. And that shift doesn't happen all at once. Healing doesn't knock on your door with a dramatic transformation. It shows up quietly. It's in the way you say no without apologizing. It's in the way you no longer explain why you left the room, the relationship, the conversation. It's in the way you catch yourself before you overextend. The way you pause before engaging in battles that don't deserve your energy. It's subtle, but it's powerful, because each of those tiny shifts is a brick in the foundation of your new identity. The beautiful, painful truth is that some people will only start realizing what you meant after you've gone silent, after you've stopped reaching out, after you've detached from the role they got used to you playing. And while they're stuck remembering who you used to be, you're out here becoming someone they no longer have access to. Not out of spite, but because healing requires space. Space away from the noise, the guilt, the people who need you confused to feel in control. You start understanding that your peace is not something you have to earn. It's something you protect. That your worth is not up for debate just because someone else couldn't see it. That closure isn't something they give you, it's something you give yourself when you decide that your future deserves more than what your past gave you. And in that realization, there is liberation. You no longer look back wishing it had worked. You look back grateful that it ended, not because the pain wasn't real, but because the pain revealed what you were willing to settle for and what you never will again. You stop needing them to acknowledge the hurt. You stop waiting for them to understand the damage, because by then you've already moved beyond it. They can stay where they are, stuck in the narrative they craft. You've outgrown it. And the irony? The moment you stop trying to make them see, they start noticing everything, noticing the strength in your silence, the beauty in your distance, the growth they never believed you were capable of. And that's what stings the most, not your absence, but your transformation. Because when you heal, you disrupt the story they told about you, the one where they had the power and you stayed small. You rewriting that script, that's the real revenge. Not bitterness, not retaliation, just truth and growth. You didn't just survive what happened, you evolved through it. You became someone who no longer accepts half love, half truths, half effort. Someone who understands that healing isn't a destination, it's a daily decision. A decision to choose peace over chaos, self-respect over attachment, growth over comfort. Let them wrestle with who you were. You're finally at peace with who you're becoming. One of the most powerful realizations you'll ever have is this: You don't need to prove you've changed to anyone who misjudged you, underestimated you, or walked away when you were still healing. Because when you truly evolve, your life becomes the proof, not your explanations, not your justifications, just your energy, just your presence, just the way you carry yourself with quiet strength now, when before they knew you as the one who bent too much, broke too often, and forgave too quickly. There's something deeply sacred about the moment you stop arguing with people about who you are. When you stop trying to convince anyone that you've grown. You don't need to tell them you've changed when the way you move now, calmly, intentionally, without apology, already shows it. You don't have to declare your peace when it's written in the way you protect your time, in how you choose your silence over drama, your stillness over chaos. That's the power of healing. It speaks for itself. The version of you they knew, that was a temporary chapter, not the whole book. And if they only saw you through the lens of their own limitations, if they only knew you at your lowest, then they never really knew you at all. Because growth has a way of making you unrecognizable to people who only paid attention to your pain, not your process. And what a freeing feeling it is to realize you don't owe anyone access to your transformation. When you stop proving and start living, everything changes. You stop entertaining conversations that drain your spirit. You stop shrinking yourself for rooms that don't feel safe. You stop waiting for people to apologize for how they treated you. You simply step forward into the version of yourself that no longer needs to be validated to feel valuable. You let your healing be enough for you, not for them. There's a quiet confidence that comes with healing that doesn't need to announce itself. It's not loud, it's not showy, but it's powerful. It's in the way you no longer need to respond to every comment, defend every decision, or explain every boundary. It's in the way you no longer get pulled into people's expectations or emotional games. Because when you grow, you realize the person you were becoming was never going to be understood by the people who only knew the version of you that was still bleeding. And you start to see that some people didn't walk away because you were weak. They walked away because they could sense who you were becoming. They knew they wouldn't be able to manipulate or guilt trip the healed version of you. They couldn't stand next to your power, so they left while you were still uncertain, while you were still building. Let them go. They weren't meant to witness the glow up. Not everyone is. The moment you step out of that old version of yourself, the world reacts differently. You begin attracting differently. You start choosing more wisely. You value time and energy like sacred currency. You no longer beg for love. You recognize it, you receive it, but you no longer chase it. And the irony, the ones who once hurt you, who once doubted you, start watching. Not because you asked them to, not because you needed them to, but because healed energy is magnetic, peace is attractive, and boundaries are powerful. You don't rise by proving anything to anyone. You rise by building a life so full of purpose, peace, and alignment that it makes every version of your old self proud. You stop explaining why you're distant, why you're unavailable, why you've changed, because you realize those who genuinely care will never make you explain your growth. They'll see it, they'll feel it, and they'll celebrate it. The rest, they were only ever comfortable with your wounds. It's not your job to carry their inability to grow. It's not your job to dim your light so they don't feel small. And it's definitely not your job to stay broken just so they can feel strong next to you. You've outgrown that role. And the more you heal, the more you realize that your peace is your power and it doesn't require permission to exist. This new you, the one who no longer seeks permission to be at peace, doesn't explain. You just show up. You just keep going. You just keep growing. You let your life speak the truth that words never could. And that truth is this: the version of you they hurt no longer exists. And that's more than enough.